Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode here at amazic.com, where we bring you the leading thought leaders from across the space in cloud native and Kubernetes. And we talk about all things Kubernetes, security, networking, storage, everything. So I'm Twain Taylor and editor at Amazic. And if you like what you hear in this interview, I want to encourage you to head over to amazic.com. We have a lot more interviews like this. And we have articles, job listings, and a whole bunch of stuff happening over there. So definitely head over to amazic.com. And with that, I wanted to introduce our guest for today. He's a friend of mine since a while. We've done some work together in his startup, his previous startup. And it's a joy to have him because, well, his startup recently got acquired by one of the really big companies in the space. So with all of that buildup, I want to introduce to you my friend Eilon Elhadad. He is the ex-CEO and co-founder of Aqua Security, which has gotten acquired by Aqua Security. And right now at Aqua, he is the general manager of software supply chain security. And so he comes with real on-the-ground experience of just building and exiting a startup successfully. And he really knows what's happening in the space of software supply chain security. And that's really our focus even for this interview, just talking about supply chain security. What is it? And how does it work in the world of cloud native? So Eilon, it's great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure to meet you, Twin. Always.
All right. So, just a few questions that I'm excited to know to get us started with. What was it like? Congrats being acquired, recently, just a few months ago. What was it like going through an acquisition? For many who are listening here, they're part of startups, and they probably wonder, what's an acquisition like? What would you have to say to them?
Yes. So I think first of all, it's quite exciting, and it's a special journey. I think if I look a little bit back, so we haven't thought like to be acquired. So basically, I think when you are trying to create real value and to push the market, to create innovation, with that come a lot of opportunities. I think I didn't tell that, but we basically we raised a round. We closed it with one of the top tier Americans ventures capital, and then a lot of offers and things like that. A lot of opportunities came up. So I think just provide value to your customers, and everything will come with that. So.
Really interesting. Wow. So acquisition wasn't even on the cards and it just happened. That's great. Yeah. And, why did it make sense for Aqua to acquire Argon? What was it about Argon that attracted Aqua?
Yes. So I think you can see a year ago, like after a year, you can see that it's 100% where the market is go, and Aqua was very innovative with their vision. If you look about companies like Aqua, they born in the shift right, basically. They born in the runtime security, in Kubernetes security, and actually they moved left. They moved left and left. Like they start with the runtime, then they create cloud security posture management, and they move to a little bit to image scanning. And Argon is the kind of the left of piece to create this synapse story. So to say, I will protect you from the moment that the code is committed until the moment it's run on production. I will do the entire life cycle. So Argon had the software supply chain security and also the code scanning part. And that was the missing part to Aqua create really end-to-end comprehensive and really today the most innovative solution in the market. So for us, it was a big bet for Aqua founders and also to Argon founders. But today we can say, specifically in my opinion, that it was a huge success.
Wow, that's awesome. Great to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah, what are you up to these days in Aqua? Bet the products are getting integrated now. What's your focus these days at Aqua?
Yes, so it was a year of building. Of course, first of all, our approach is to deliver value to our customers. So there are a lot works to do in every department. Of course, it's everything started from the product. So fully implement the product as a native solution in the Aqua platform. And today, that's the situation. Dozens of customers are running it. All Argon customers migrated, and it was a huge success. 0% of churn. That was the main focus. But after that, to train the support, to create the knowledge in the solution architect area, like to speak the DevOps language, and then to move to the customer success and to the sales. So each division should speak this new language, and everything should be connected to one story. So I think that's what we did. And today we are always keeping, we want to help our customers in their challenges, and the market is always evolving.
Yeah. Fascinating. I'm sure there's, joining Aqua has brought a lot of scale to your operations previously. That's great to hear. Very exciting updates. And, I wanted to get into our core topic for today, which is supply chain security. If you could start off with just very basics, if you could explain to us what is supply chain security and what is not supply chain security, because obviously security is huge, different, like you were mentioning, runtime and threat detection as well was Aqua's start. So, if you could sort of tell us what is supply chain security and how is it different from the other types of security?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, there is a lot of different translation to software supply chain security. I think when we have started, we were the first company that basically tried to secure the CI/CD. That's how we called it. Like CI/CD is basically the technical terminology to software supply chain. So in the past, 2 years ago, there was a lot of players that secure the code, and a lot of players that secure the cloud. But no one secured the process. So what's happened basically that bad actors understood that the code is pretty much secured. The open source flow doesn't at all. The process to build the software doesn't at all. And then if you remember SolarWinds was a point that someone injects something to the build stage after the code scanned, and that then was the first time that people understand what is software supply chain. So I think software supply chain security today is meant to secure everything from the moment developers commit the code until the moment it's run on production. So to protect each phase of the chain and to have kind of a context to the entire chain. That's software supply chain security.
Yeah, interesting that you brought up SolarWinds, the attack, and that really was a watershed, a huge moment for just the security space. Even the US government has laid out regulations after that for, software supply chain and software security as a whole. So despite that happening, and that was so big, are you saying that today, if organizations implement supply chain security in the right way, they could prevent those kind of attacks from happening to them? Is that possible?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, it's a huge challenge. And, security keep evolving and the bad actor also. But if you and you look about the executive order, we create something with CIS benchmark that how to secure the software supply chain. There is a few principles. The first one is to do scanning and to do that well. And it's important that it will be consolidated. One scanner that do everything. The second piece will be to secure the process itself, to produce SBOM, to understand what you release. And the last piece will be to hardening the environment. After you do all of those, and you combine it with the understanding of runtime and enforce control from both sides, from the left to the right and from the right to the left, then you will minimize the attack surfaces significantly.
Okay. Yeah, if you could repeat those three things again for me, just so I remember, I want to dig into it a little bit. So the first thing you said is securing the process. And
the first thing is to do the scanning well, like to do one universal scanner in the code scanning, in the CI, in the ID, in the image part, to do one universal code scanning.
Code scanning is first. And the second you said is securing the process. That's the CI/CD process, I'm assuming. And the
Correct.
third thing you said is securing the environments.
Yes, the tools themselves. They are to hardening the environment, to hardening your Jenkins, to hardening your repository management, the source code management, to hardening your registry. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So I want to dig into each of these. So when you say scanning, right? Scanning has been, the idea has been around since containers came on the scene. So, there was early container scanning, container image scanning tools like Quay from CoreOS, and, they got acquired by Red Hat, etc. So they've been around for a while, but when you mention scanning, you're probably talking about more than just container images. What kind of scanning, what does your scanning involve?
So first of all, of course, the traditional code scanning exists in the last decade. Yeah, open source vulnerabilities that called SCA, software composition analysis, SAST, IAC. So there are a lot of different types of scanning, and you need to do all of them. But there is the next gen. So I will give you an example from the open source world. Until today, you check if there is a CVE for the specific open source package, and that's it. But let's assume that there is an open source package that created yesterday by unknown source, and you bring it to your pipeline because the developer needed it. 0 stars in GitHub, 0 forks, unknown maintainer that created yesterday. So is it open your organization to new attack surface? Maybe yes, maybe not. Is it contain CVE? Of course not. The project created yesterday. And a lot of different examples, inactive packages, someone that changed the main maintainer to another one, maybe they still the credentials. So if you want to really scan the open source vulnerability, to scan open source, it's not enough to say there is CVE or not CVE. That's an example to the next gen of code scanning. That's what I mean. So of course you need all the traditional scanners, but you also need the next gen scanners that is most to governance on the pipelines, to understand what's going on there.
Okay. Could you give me an example of what kind of scanning this next gen scanning tool would do? Would it go through each line of code looking for vulnerabilities? What could you give us an example of the kind of vulnerabilities it could find?
So one, yeah, absolutely. So one of the example is really in open source packages, you don't look about CVEs, you look, of course, but you also look about the quality and the score of the open source itself. You try to prioritize and to understand what is the grade that you will give to this open source. What is the reputation of this open source? Another thing will be, you need to understand the context. You can say only, oh, there is CVE. And if you don't import this package, and if you import this package, but it's not run on runtime, so you need context to those things. So we need to take the code scanning to the next level. That's kind of the things that you need to look for, Yeah.
Really interesting. So yeah, I'm guessing at Argonne, you guys built these from the ground up, right? From scratch, you guys built what are the parameters we should check for, and when do we have a high confidence score? Could you give us a bit about the kind of thinking that went into building the scanning process? I mean, I know we're getting a little deep into scanning, and we'll move on to the next step.
Absolutely. When we look about it, it's actually not so far from code quality. You want a code quality. You want a code that the quality of the code is good to your software. And if you use, for example, our open source Trivi, more than 50K stars, thousands of companies are using it. Someone maintaining it consistently. This is a strong open source. This is an open source that you want in your company from code quality perspective, but also from security perspective. So that's the way we thought about it when we build the open source. We call it open source health in our company. and when we build the reputation mechanism. And the other side was to minimize the alert fatigue, to understand the context, to create reachability analysis, to see if this package really using by our software. So we always thought about the developers when we speak about code scanning. That's what we did when we built it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that insight. I think that's quite insightful to see how you guys went through this whole process. And talking about process again, I want to come back to the second part, which is securing the process. So this is probably a myth that if I'm running a CI/CD pipeline that's managed by, let's say, GitLab, they have security built into it. I don't need to worry about security. Is that a myth that you need to bust?
First of all, we really love to see vendors that bring more security to the table. Microsoft provides security for years, but still there is tons of endpoint solution that give much better solution. You can say the same thing on AWS, on Azure. So it's very good that GitLab and the other vendors take responsibility and participate, with the adoption, etc. But when we integrated to our GitLab or any other source code management and we extract the pipelines, first of all, most of the companies doesn't know how many pipelines they have. And they think they have 100, they have 10,000. And then you figure it out like they don't configure it properly. We have today for my knowledge, we are the only one that have a mechanism to static pipeline analysis. Exactly like you have static code analysis, we build mechanism that's called static pipeline analysis. And we believe that if you don't configure properly your pipelines, so you have a new attack surface. And on top of that, we have a mechanism that saves you on the build stage, that makes sure there isn't unauthorized change to your code during the build. So a lot of things that we believe you need to do when you secure your pipelines. So it's great that you have the checkbox of any other tool, and it's the data that we can collect and use for our context, but it's completely not enough.
Okay, interesting. And when we talk about having obviously security, like you were saying, it involves different vendors, different tools. So what becomes important is really integrating these different tools. And the CI/CD pipeline today, the supply chain is getting more complex, more fragmented. How does Aqua keep pace with all of this fragmentation, with new vendors coming up every few weeks? How are the integrations handled?
Yeah, it's another very good point. Like that, most of the companies I didn't met, and I met maybe thousands of companies have fragmented CI/CD, have different tools, have a build, an open source, and another company that they acquired, and a lot of, and you need to governance all of them. We build kind of an abstract layer that speak the language of the CI/CD. And what we have built is a team that the only responsibility of this team is to integrate it to new CI/CD tools. So basically, they create the communication to the tool, but the abstraction layer is maintenance by our platform team. And in that way, we keep the same language during the CI/CD. And behind of it, we build kind of, it's a little bit technical, but a knowledge graph that's know to read this CI/CD language. And in that way, we can easily integrate it to every new tool. It takes us a few days and that's it. And we have all the capabilities of the software supply chain security of Aqua in that solution.
That's great. Which are some of the most common integrations that you see?
Jenkins is maybe the most famous build server, no doubt, the biggest open source. Everybody uses it. Really, I see it in every case. Of course, GitHub, a lot of developers like GitHub, and a lot of companies use GitLab, etc. And of course, there is some more famous registries and some less, but it's really a fragmented market.
Yeah, really interesting. And so, coming to this last step, which you are talking about, environments, Could you explain a bit more? How do you secure environments? Why is it important?
Yes, absolutely. I will say only one thing on top of
Sure.
that in the process.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not only to extract the pipelines and to governance on them. It's also to create something that we call next generation SBOM. That is not
Okay.
only
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
software bill of materials.
Mhm.
It's also to record every step during the software supply chain when you build your application, and to be able to create policies on top of it. So if one of your developers build an application without two minimum reviewers, it's not right. And you need to be able in our next generation SBOM to governance on that. And that's something that we also provide. Regarding to hardening the environment, the last piece, we released another open source that called QBench, just for one specific source code management. But of course, in our enterprise version, we provide security to all the tools. There is hundreds of different configuration in each tool. That is not basically related to security. It's kind of related to quality, to a lot of things. We give you, based on what we have built with CIS benchmark, the right configuration. So we connect to your tools, we're able to remediate automatically and to change the configuration. And of course, also to just alert you. It's dependent on you and the maturity of the company. And one of the most important part, because for example, in SolarWinds case, how someone get an access to the build stage. So we believe that it was a misconfiguration. Of course, also a very advanced attack, and but someone getting access to the build. So you need to, minimize the restriction, to create policies around it, to make sure you don't have dependency confusion, and a lot of different other configurations. We have hundreds of different policies for each tool. That's a lot to handle alone.
Wow. Yeah, could you give me a few examples of these policies and how you can apply policies in a very fine-grained way across, because there's so many teams, different roles within those teams. How do you apply policies in those situations?
So when we integrated to the CI/CD tools, it's happened completely seamlessly. We have the ability to extract all the misconfiguration. Let's take an example: branch protection. You must, you have to, from our perspective, to enforce branch protection on the repo. You have to disable forks to minimize source code leaks, attack surfaces. Jenkins built on plugins. All those plugins, they are open source. You need to make sure you are in the right version. One of the most famous plugins in Jenkins, it's related to authentication, SSO, LDAP, etc. In most of the versions, you can put the hard-coded password, the default one, and to connect to this build. So in the registry, it's always open by default to something that's called dependency confusion, which you can speak a lot, but it's basically to pull a package that is not a package that you want to pull from outside world. And it's endless. And you need someone that will always keep updating with the market and with the configurations and will fix it for you.
Yeah, so really interesting. So what you're saying is you've got these policies that are already pre-created, and any user of Aqua could just take these policies with a few clicks of a few buttons. They have the policy applied, and it's running on their pipeline. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, when you integrate it to the pipeline, we give you it out of the box. We give you kind of software supply chain security posture management, and then you can see something that's called toolchain, and you can see all of your tools with the misconfiguration and if to remediate them or not. Just if you give us an access to your pipelines. And
this is built out for like a huge range of tools, so you won't run short. I mean, it's not like your tool is not covered.
Yeah, it's endless, and every week we release more and more tools.
That's great. Wow. If you could talk a bit about, the way Aqua handles it once a vulnerability is found at some point, any of these three steps. How does Aqua handle these vulnerabilities? What are the kind of alerts? Is there a mature alerting mechanism that's available? Can we route particular alerts to particular people? Can we have logic for the alerts? Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. So in Aqua, we have something that it's cross-platform. So it's not only in the shift left or shift right, because in the end, it's one platform. It's called response policy mechanism.
Okay.
You basically can create a response based on policy. So let's assume you have a new CV, log4j. So you can create a policy that says the next thing. If log4j cause me open a door in my runtime, and it's also in my code, open a pull request to the developer with the next fixed version, like that. In your source code, you also create for every new vulnerability, send me a Slack message to the owner of the repo. So we connect between runtime to code time. That's the power of it. And the response policy is the mechanism that gives us the ability to create automated response.
All right, cool. Winding down, we got just a couple more questions. But yeah, this sounds really great, what Aqua is able to offer when it comes to supply chain security. And you really explained it well with the different steps and the different things going in depth into each step. So thank you so much for that. So, we spoke a lot about the tools and the technologies, but then a lot of times security, there's also a people aspect. There's the teams that are behind the tools, using the tools. And a lot of times things go wrong there. I'd like for you to sort of give us some of your thoughts on, how should teams think about security? And to start with, who should own security in an organization? And what are some of the mistakes you see organizations making when it comes to how people approach security within the organizations? Do they give too much security responsibility to developers? Or should they be giving more to developers? Just anything on those lines, the people part of security.
Yeah, so I think, as you said, it's maybe one of the biggest part and the biggest challenges in every organization. So the tool is important. Consolidation is very important to the people, and I will explain, but the people is the most important thing. Absolutely, in every organization. I think the sweet spot, and it's not happened always, and that's one of the reasons that there isn't a bridge between developers to security, that the security will own the responsibility to create the processes, to create the best practices, but not alone, with the developers, with a very good relationship, with the trust. And then, of course, to build the method of shift left mechanism. And not to create a new process, to copy the way code quality checks works. Because today, the developers doesn't release bugs. Why they need to release vulnerable packages? So at the point that companies are struggling to work together, they will not succeed. There is full collaboration between the DevOps team, the developers, and the security. And you need all of them, because the DevOps owns the tool most of the time. The security owns the responsibility, yeah? And the developer, they created the application. So you, in every company that have a good culture, the people can speak with each other, I believe they can find the right way. And it's always related to how they maintenance code quality. If they maintenance code quality, we can just copy the process. So if you upload a bug, you blocked. If you upload the vulnerability, you blocked. But in the same way, that's how I see it. I can speak about it like hours, because really it's a big challenges for organization, and big of organization, they are fragmented and a lot of different divisions. So it's not something that we'll cover in a minute, but my 2 cents is really to create a process from the beginning that all of those personas are aligned.
Yeah, alignment and just collaborating, I get that, as your main focus when it comes to teams. And we should definitely bring you on maybe after a few months to talk about this as a part 2, the people aspect of
I will be
security.
happy to.
And the last question for you, Eilon, on supply chain security is just looking at the future of supply chain security. What excites you the most? What developments do you see coming around the corner? What do you see?
So I think for us in Aqua, there are a lot, but the main thing is to help the company to reduce alert fatigue. That's will lead them to fix the right vulnerabilities and to minimize the attack surface. So it's also will do them the life easier, but also more secure. There are a lot to do. The market is still and keep evolving all the time. It's the first time this year that we will get compliance in the end of the year, and it's a big initiative. It's for me, it's amazing to see how 2 years ago, no one was sure there is something that called the software supply chain security, and by the end of this year, we'll have the executive order. That is also something that we are covering in Aqua. So there are a lot comes to do, and all the vendors, I believe, will focus more and more on software supply chain security. I'm 100% sure.
Yeah. Awesome. So with that, we've covered our main questions on supply chain security. We have a couple of questions to get to know you a little bit. So yeah, here goes. Your alternate career path, if not for your job in tech.
Wow. When I was young, I wanted to be like a soccer player, but I understand that now I'm not good enough. Yeah. So I think I really love sports. So if it's not related to all those things, I maybe.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So you're following the World Cup, I guess. Which was your favorite team? Which is your favorite team?
I think Messi deserves it.
All right, Argentina.
So Argentina.
All right,
yeah.
Let's see. All right, next question. Argon was acquired this past year. How did you celebrate the company getting acquired?
So first of all, with the people that bring me to this stage. So we did a very big party to the company, and celebrated with my family. But that's it. Nothing's very special.
Great. Wow. Complete the sentence. Startup life is
amazing journey.
All right. Wow. It's great that you could say that, because a lot of people in there grinding it, and, it's great to see you have a positive take on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One hobby or interest that you picked up during the pandemic.
Actually, I was focused on building Argon in the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
So I will say that my biggest passion is to build creating companies, and I don't think it will change in the future.
All right. No distractions, no need for them. Great. Lastly, where do you get your updates on what's happening in the space? Where do you go to find out what's happening?
So I think, first of all, from customers, we are always about challenges and and then you always up to date, because you see a huge variety of them around the world, like as customers in the USA, in Europe, in APAC, so every place in the world, and you expose a lot. And the second thing, it's a little bit my expertise. I really like it. I'm passionate about it. To understand new attack surfaces, always, to see online. My colleague Eilon, that was Argon CTO, is a brilliant guy. So I, pulling from him a lot. Yeah.
All right. Wow, awesome. That was all the questions we had for you, Eilon. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing. It was really a whirlwind, yet a deep dive into supply chain security. You gave us so much to think about, and really happy that we got to speak to you today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Yeah. And everyone who's watching, if you like this, definitely head over to amazic.com where we have a lot more video interviews just like this. So you can definitely continue your journey to hear from many experts like Eilon today. So with that, Eilon and myself signing off. Thank you so much.